Alright, Trial Mob, welcome back to another TBG feature, and today we're going back to our bread and butter, Acid Rain. The world of Acid Rain is always serving up some really cool stuff, and today we have some new Omangan troops. Specifically, we're going over Gauntlet, and as you can tell, he is an absolutely incredible looking figure. This is coming off hot of the heels of the Geists. This is basically using the same underbody to give us a brand new type of basically HQ unit. So we're going to go over him, we're going to talk about him and see, even though Acid Rain prices are obviously a little bit on the pricey side, is this worth getting? Is this the right way to go for your figures? Let's find out. And as per usual, of course, if you could like, comment, and subscribe, I would really appreciate that, as the content is definitely coming in quick, and soon I'll be able to bring you guys a lot more for the content. Now, of course, presentation is always going to matter, and as per usual, Acid Rain knocks it out of the park. We get a wonderful box with a beautiful shot of Gauntlet on there. I really do appreciate what they have going on here. We see the arm, both guns, the weapons. I mean, they did a really good job here of showing us some really nice stuff. You know, there we have a nice close cleanup shot of Gauntlet itself. And honestly, I think that they did the right way. I've said this before, like with Valdo, we didn't really get a nice overall pretty photo of him for the box art. But in this case, I think Gauntlet really nailed it. It looks like there's somebody sitting, or should I say somebody that he's probably killed on the ground in front of him. But he just looks like he just busted in somewhere and is just about to kick ass and take names. And I really appreciate that. And of course, you get Gauntlet on the side, Acid Rain on the side, and then on the back you get a nice view of what the figure and the box come with. And of course, he does come with an array of different equipment, and we're going to go over that in a second. Alright, so let's go ahead and pull him out. And as you can tell, a really beautiful looking figure. So as I mentioned earlier, this is based on the Geist's figure. So basically what's happening here is we have that initial Geist body under, and they put a few things on top of it. So mainly the vest that we see up front, the belt, and then some soft goods. I don't know if you want to call that a cape or what exactly you would call that, but that like loincloth type material around the waist. I really love that kind of stuff. It's not necessarily the highest of quality, but I think that it does perfectly fine for what you need it for. Of course, you get that red arm, which I think is the first time we've seen specifically this kind of red arm. I'll go over why it's different later. I want to say the arm itself is actually exactly the same, it's just in red, but that shoulder piece is a 100% different shoulder piece. I don't know if we've seen that before, but as you can tell on this close-up, that face just looks gnarly. This guy reminds me of Emil from Halo. I really think that maybe that's what they were trying to go for here, make him more of a hunter, and that's kind of what he's supposed to be. Of course, you also get the red of the arm. If you pay attention to it, it's a metallic red. I don't think we've gotten that before. I know we've gotten like a matte kind of color before from other characters, but this like metallic red really emphasizes the fact that that's a robotic arm that he has there. And all the other pieces that come in together really play into the whole motif of his character. And I like the fact that they didn't stop there. They kind of gave him that red pouch. It's a really nice look overall. Coming down to the legs, this is basically exactly what we've seen before from the Geists. It's just that this has been painted more of that sand color. I apologize ahead of time. I know that it didn't come out perfect in terms of the lighting here, but I had to basically do a few things to try to give you guys the best look. The granulated look on the body is there from top to bottom. We always appreciate that. So when it comes to the accessories, we get 2 pistols, an LMG, and then a assault rifle style with a backpack, and then that box you see there is the box magazine for the LMG. So this is what we also get in the Black Sand Troopers. Basically, the Black Sand Troopers come with exactly what you see here, a pistol each and the exact same gun each, just in more of a brownish color instead of having this red trim that you see here. The backpacks are different, but it's really nice overall. Now, of course, he holds his pistols with no problem dual wielding them here. It's a really cool look. Gauntlet definitely looks badass, and anything that you do with him because of the general aesthetic Here we see the gun that he comes with, again with that red trim. Again, I like the fact that the red trim kind of goes with him. And then the LMG, of course, comes with that kickstand, which is a really nice look, but you can't really get him to aim down sight with it, so there's that. Okay, now switching over to articulation, what is a good figure without articulation? As you guys know from the Geist review that you should try to take a look at, he doesn't have the vest or the belt, so he can move a lot better. The Geist figure can move a lot better. In this case, Gauntlet has a little bit of a restriction. The helmet is shaped differently as well, so you don't get as much overall, but you do get enough here. So you can see he can look up fairly far, look down fairly far. Can't really do like a pivot left to right because of the bottom parts of that helmet. Again, not necessarily an issue in the Geist, but it is an issue here. You can get a little bit of personality out of that if you kind of move it to the sides, but there's that. When it comes to the T-pose, this is where it becomes very asymmetrical. On the right arm, it can come up pretty far to the T-pose because it's just basically a overlay that's hooked on by an O-ring, but on that right arm, or excuse me, on the left arm, the metallic arm, if you look in there, it's not. The entire shoulder is basically that red piece that you see there, so it only allows you to go up to about a 45-degree angle. Now, this body does have a butterfly joint, and as you can tell, he can go fairly forward and fairly far back. Of course, the full 360, and in this case, that's not an issue at all with the robotic arm. So while you don't get 45, you still get a good overall butterfly joint. The middle waist goes a little bit forward, a little bit back, full 360 all the way around. Again, you get a lot more than that in the Geist, but they also don't come with any armor. You can more or less do the splits here, probably more than you'll really need for this kind of figure. Moving back up to the arms, you'll get that upper bicep, dual, well, it's actually only one joint, as you can tell there, for the elbow, but it's kind of moved forward, and that allows you to get that really nice, really deep, almost sandwiching the arms, so way past 90 degrees. On the right hand, you get the pistol grip. On the left hand, you get the push-up grip. So very asymmetrical figure. This actually feels very, very different overall, and I do really enjoy that. Now, moving down into the legs, you get that upper thigh swivel, full 360 if you need it. Double joint at the knees, which, as you'll see, allow him to go pretty far back. Though if you kind of adjust it a little bit more at the bottom, I think it'll go a little further. I don't know if I show that. Yep, so you get a little bit more, and then you can sandwich that leg a little bit more, so that's pretty good. And then as we move down further into the leg, that upper ankle has basically a swivel, so you can do that full 360. And then you can toe hinge down. Toe hinge not as far forward as I would like, but it's enough. And then of course you can go ahead and have that pivot that breaks the ankle all the way down. So in terms of articulation, not as good as the Geist. As you can see there, you don't get 90 degrees in the legs. You kind of have to do that Star Wars Black Series thing where you kind of move the legs a little out to the right to be able to get it all the way up. I guess not the biggest of issues, but I do sometimes wish when I see this kind of stuff that the hips were dropped down just the slightest bit so that you could more easily get into 90-degree angles with the legs. But for what you need, I think this guy's got it. Okay. Now, switching over to size comparisons, because of course, what would this be without a size comparison? I have a load of stuff for you guys here. Let's go ahead and get it off. So starting off with the Black Sand Troopers, we basically have both of them. I'll show you guys the first one here. As you can tell, it's the exact same body. Not obviously the exact same overlays, but it's the exact same underbody, different helmet. There's definitely a lot of differences going on here. Granted, they are the same base body. As you can tell, even with another figure right next to it that has the exact same face, same shoulders, and the same underbody, even here we get differences in terms of the chest armor, the belt. So there's enough differences here to give you a bit of a different look. But as you can tell, they're uniform, they're fairly large, and they're all standing very, very, how can I say, not scary, intimidating. It's a very intimidating force that they have here. I think Acid Rain knocked it out of the park with the size, scale, and the overall aesthetic of these figures. Now, switching over to other Acid Rain figures, here we have Commander Bob. Now, I don't know if you can see that, but Bob is definitely shorter. You know, maybe because he's an older guy, but this is technically a bigger buck than the regular stuff. And you'll see right now when I add a Marine in here. but Bob is just slightly smaller than Gauntlet, and I would say that it's definitely noticeable. And then it's a good size overall. I think that Acid Rain tends to be scaled a little bit bigger than, let's say, Joy Toy, but once I bring in this Marine right here, you'll see that he is even the slightest bit shorter than Bob. So in front of that really large body that is Gauntlet, and the rest of the Black Sand Troopers are going to be, for the most part, larger than a lot of the Argert's military stuff that we've gotten, for the exception, I guess you could say, of the Bucks team. Now, of course, switching over to Joy Toy. So here we have the Tau Soldier, and as you can tell, the Fire Warrior is actually shorter than Gauntlet. So just to show you how tall Gauntlet is, I know he's not necessarily one of the bigger characters, like let's say Mason, which I need to do a review of, but he is fairly large. And as you can tell, it's about a whole forehead bigger. This is kind of what I imagine the difference in size would be between human characters from Joy Toy and then the Tau. And of course, what would we be doing if we didn't add the Primaris? So I decided to add the Primaris here. He already looks relatively not big enough next to the Tau Soldier, let alone having him next to Gauntlet. Gauntlet looks maybe like a half head smaller. So again, this just goes to highlight, even with Acid Rain being slightly bigger than Joy Toy, definitely you're going to have a problem putting the Primaris next to literally anything, because he's just not going to be big enough compared to anything that's going to end up being larger than your average Joy Toy 6-foot figure. Well, I mean 3.75 inch, but you get what I mean. But again, this really highlights the disparity of this height. Now, continuing for Joy Toy, now we have just the regular Joy Toy soldiers. And as you can tell, Gauntlet, while being a bigger figure, is probably only slightly taller than Johnny, but the Militia Warrior number 3 might be the slightest bit taller. I should have probably given you guys a size comparison with our Primaris Captain behind them, just so you could see how short he is. Again, I feel like this body is way too big for some of the human characters, but alas, that's what we're getting right now from Joy Toy. So hopefully that scale gets fixed. But in terms of these characters, usually Joy Toy tends to run a little smaller. So this is actually one of the tallest guys we've gotten from Joy Toy compared to Gauntlet right here in Acid Rain. And then switching over to Fresh Retro, as you can tell, Fresh Retro, which is not really a brand that I'm a big fan of right now. We'll have to talk about that later, and I'll have to make a review for you guys. But the smaller size figure is noticeably smaller in basically all dimensions from Gauntlet, and then the larger size figure is massive altogether. So this is something that could work. This is something that you could do in terms of, having them fight each other in your photography. I think that this is really going to be this is going to give you a lot of chances, a lot of choices, a lot of things to do here. So I do appreciate what they've been able to do. Now, if you have been watching this far, I wanted to go ahead and give you guys something special for those of you who actually watch my reviews from beginning to end. Here we have the Primaris Marine next to both of the Fresh Retro figures. This is all I'm going to say. Joy Toy, if you're watching, this figure should be just as big as a Fresh Retro character on the right. There's absolutely no reason why it should be this small. And to be honest, all your human characters should be about as big as a Fresh Retro guy on the left. So I think that if all the human characters were the size of the smaller figure, and all your Primaris were the size of the larger Fresh Retro character on the right, you would have what I would call a perfect scale. So here's a brand that's not Joy Toy who has made it happen, who has made it work at that scale. It looks great. So hopefully, if you guys are watching this, for those of you who are seeing this, who actually watch my reviews, let me know what you think about this quick size comparison here as extra content that I'm giving you guys. And what do you think about the overall scale? So when it comes to Gauntlet, is he a character that's easy to play with? You know what? Kind of. So when it comes to smaller figures, they're always going to be fairly playable because they are, easier to deal with in hand. And I think this is the smallest you can go before they start to get a little too small. One of the problems that I think I have with all three of these figures is that their backpacks don't easily go into the back of their backpacks. You really have to try to line it up before you can get it in there. Once it lines up, it does go in there pretty smoothly and it holds on really tightly. So when it comes to the playability of this character, the playability is pretty good. the figure has tight joints. Nothing necessarily falls off easy. It does a good job of keeping the poses that you give the figure. It does a good job of posing into the poses that you want. The only thing that I would say that makes it maybe a little bit more difficult is the fact that belt gets in the way of being able to get into those other poses that you might want to get into, and the helmet itself doesn't allow him to really look up all that much. But in terms of everything else, not a problem. Can you get him in an aim down sight with his smaller weapon? Yes, you can, and it looks really nice. Can we get him into that kneeling position that I was talking about? Does it take a few different tries? Yes, and as you'll see, you kind of have to put that back foot more flat, but you can get him down. Again, you're not able to get him flush, so you kind of have to bring down the gun. And when you look at him from the front, it's like he's leaning way further back than he should be. But again, not a big problem. Can you get him into the position? Yes, you can. Is it flush? Not exactly. Does it look realistic? Yes. So at least I would like to give Gauntlet the benefit of the doubt that with all the extra armor, you still get most of what you want out of him, right? Can you kind of, link it up to the side like that? Can you put it up like if he was going to shoot it from the neutral position under his arm? Yes, you can. It looks good. And again, everything is fairly sturdy. Once you get him into place, he's not really moving, right? Can he kick forward? Yes, he can. But do you have to move him back? Yeah, you do. So again, it's not a perfect figure, but as you can tell, the backpack's moved a few times while I've been playing with this figure, and it hasn't come off. There you are. Just a few, up and downs, nothing came off. So it's a sturdy figure. It's easy to play with. I feel like a lot of people seem to like Acid Rain for that. Just the overall quality, the way everything feels, and how things tend to hold on fairly tightly. Now, moving over to the larger gun, and this is where it gets a little bit more tricky. The gun is very, very large, and it has a huge stock, which kind of, I don't know, for me makes it kind of unwieldy. I almost think they maybe should have shortened it up just a little bit. Basically what I'm doing here is showing you how you should probably try to do this. Get the belt clip in and then put the box onto it. It gets really hard to clip correctly. I think that they should have came out with a better mechanism than this, as it never seems to line up perfectly. There's always a tilt to it. Once you get it in hand, it's got a really big gun grip. So that's nice. As you can tell, you could almost get both hands on that gun grip, so that's nice. But that big stock does make it kind of difficult to get into place. And when you try to bring the other arm around, it's not that it's not flush, is that you really have to try to get it in at the right angle. You'll see here that I popped off the ammo box in a second. But it can be done, and it does look flush enough. But it's just really big, right? Like it's not the easiest thing to do. And he does stand. I don't know if I show that, but when you let him go, he does stand fairly well. Now, one of the things that I tried to do was try to get him in a prone position. It's doable. It's not perfect, and you kind of have to swing the hand back. So more so, I think what I tried to do here was get him more into a pose like this, where you could use those front stand, the tripod. And it's doable, it's workable, and it does look good. And I think that maybe that's what this gun is more supposed to be. Not supposed to be really aiming down sight, but more so having it, plucked up against something so that he can shoot down range. So maybe that makes it easier to work with, that's for sure. But it's definitely a figure that is, with this gun specifically, it makes it a little bit more difficult to work with. Alright, Trial Mob, so there you have it. Gauntlet is an amazing character, really awesome figure. He really brings a lot of character to the Omangan military. I really liked what they did with the Geists, and I knew that that was going to be the underbody for the rest of the Omangan military. And this right here really updates them. It's not to say that I wouldn't still buy some of the older Omangan stuff if they became available, but this right here really modernizes them. Even though these guys don't necessarily have names, right? It's just Gauntlet and the Black Sand Troopers. This is what I basically look at as being the Bucks team, or as you could say that This is the Omangan version of the Bucks team, all the characters that we're getting with the red armor. And then eventually, hopefully with the Bucks team, we're going to be getting just regular soldiers that go with it, right? Like Bucks troopers or something. But again, I think that they've knocked it out of the park with the aesthetic. These are really cool figures that, yes, they're pricey, but if you can get them at a good price, or if you're okay with the price tag, I think they do come with a lot. And this is one of their better releases, especially if you guys like that, like, more sinister look of the Omangan characters, right? I don't think anybody does it as good. If you want more sinister than this, you're gonna have to go with the Soil Ghosts, but they have an overall different look. But if you want kind of like that evil military vibe, I don't know why, but these guys absolutely nail that. I know that they kind of are, but again, I think that this is going to be something that you're going to love to add to your collection. So let me know your thoughts, and of course, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe, and I will see you guys on the next feature. Deuces.